In the late summer months of 1970, when the heat and the humidity were baking the southern United States, a strange sound broke the stillness of the night, interrupting the chorus of frogs and crickets and making chills run down the spines of every child in the area. A shrill, high-pitched wail echoed through the air as the sun went down one night. It was unlike anything the children ever heard before. School was out for the summer, and that meant the kids stayed outside most of the day. They played the normal kid games like tag and softball, climbed trees, and rode bikes. It was the time of the year when it didn't get dark until 9 o'clock. But the minute darkness fell, those kids ran indoors. It wasn't because they were tired or hungry. They went inside because they were scared of what was outside after dark. You see, they had been warned to be in before sunset, before the creatures who hid in the woods came out at night to haunt. Whether it was the truth or a ploy by parents to get the kids in the house and ready for bed is unknown. What is known is something lived in the woods and came out after dark to create havoc. Some called it a gallywampus, while others called it a wampus cat. They described it as a half-cat, half-human figure that preyed on livestock and pets. The more logical folk in the area explained the creature as a coyote, bobcat, or maybe even a large raccoon. The old-timers disagreed with logic. They believed the Wampus Cat had come to their area. It was the end of July and it was hot as the dickens. A bunch of kids had come up with a plan to drag an old plastic sheet onto the hill in the backyard and wet it down with a garden hose. Then they ran across the grass and dove belly first on top of the wet plastic. They were having such a good time that they didn't want to go inside. When they were called to come home and go inside, they pretended not to hear and kept right on sliding across the wet plastic. Before they knew it, it had gotten dark. They were in the back part of the yard because that's where the hill was. Now living in rural Alabama, there wasn't street lights or yard lights, and the lights from the house didn't even shine out that far. So when it got dark, real dark. Realizing how late it must be, they started inside. They were about halfway up the hill when they heard it, a high-pitched scream. They froze in place, blinking nervously into the darkness, trying to determine where it had come from. Somewhere, a twig cracked. A piercing shriek echoed through the night, drowning out the hum of the hungry mosquitoes. Glowing yellow eyes peered out from the tree line. Those kids ran into the house, convinced the monster was behind them. The creature they were so frightened of was half-human, half-cat called Gallywampus or the Wampus Cat. Based on an old Cherokee folktale, stories of the Wampus Cat have been circulating around the southeastern United States for hundreds of years, ever since the settlers and Indians began interacting. According to the old-timers and mountain people, the Wampus Cat have been seen around these parts since their grandparents and great-grandparents settled there. Believers say it's half cat and half human with glowing yellow eyes. They also claim it has 6 legs with long, sharp claws, and some say it has a spiked ball on the end of its tail. Some say it's a demon monster, and some say it's a witch. No matter what it is, people agree that it's pure evil. They claim it can run faster than a cheetah, jump higher than a kangaroo, and swim better than a shark. There isn't much that can escape the Wampus Cat. The Wampus Cat, or Gallywampus as some people call it, roams all over the southeastern United States. It has been seen in Alabama, Tennessee, North and South Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Georgia. Nobody knows if it's the same one or if there's more than one of them. The first reported signs were in the early 1890s in the untamed forested mountains of North Carolina. An old-timer said a creature was killing his chickens. He claimed it was some sort of monster. When people asked him to describe it, he drew a picture of a beast with huge fangs and sharp claws. It looked similar to a mountain lion, but larger. and with extremely long razor-sharp claws extending from his toes. He called it the Iridel Santer. People didn't believe him when they saw the drawing. They laughed at him and blamed the attack on a bear or wild dogs, and the hype died down for a while. In March of 1931, though, the creature reappeared. A farmer came home from a movie one night after dark. As he approached his home, it was unusually quiet. He found about 30 of his best hens, their heads ripped off and laid dead in their own blood. He claimed his cow got so scared it ran off to the neighbor's house for safety. People tried to explain the attacks as a crazed wild animal, but nobody knew for sure what had happened. The man claimed the Wampus Cat did it. People laughed at him. But then, a few days later, a huge monster attacked a man and a woman on their way home from church. The man said he got a look at the creature. He described it as having 4 legs with paws like a lion and walking upright on an additional 2 hind legs like a bear. People grew frightened. They set a bounty for anybody who would kill the monster. The Wampus Cat was never captured. More farm animals kept mysteriously turning up dead or missing. The local sheriff tried to calm people and even went so far as to kill a huge raccoon and claim it as the culprit behind the attacks. In September of 1931, a farmer near Asheville claimed a giant cat-like creature had killed his chickens and a pig. For weeks after that, farmers of the area would wake up in the mornings and find their cattle and pigs dead in the pen. They couldn't figure out what was doing it. Some people said a bear because of the claw marks and bites, and others said it was a cougar. The creature never appeared when people were keeping watch, so nobody ever got a really good look at it. The descriptions that were reported were unbelievable. Some claimed it was 8 feet tall and walked upright like a man. Others claimed it ran on 6 legs and screamed. Almost everybody reported the same glowing yellow eyes, though. After a while, the Wampus sighting stopped, like it had just disappeared. Shortly after that, people in Georgia and South Carolina started claiming similar sightings. Their livestock was being killed under mysterious circumstances, too. Just like in North Carolina, the killings suddenly stopped. Many years later, in 1964, people in the mountains of western North Carolina and Tennessee started reporting strange things like tools moved and things knocked over during the night. More dead animals were found, and people in the area said it was the Wampus at work again. There are 2 different stories about how the Wampus Cat came to be. The first story comes from the tellings of an ancient Cherokee people who first settled in the mountains of North Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. The story has been passed down through the generations, but it remains the same. The Indian folk tale says that the Wampus Cat was actually a cursed Cherokee woman who did wrong by spying on men's meetings. According to the legend, a Cherokee hunting party was getting prepared to go out to look for game. Before the trip, they meet in a secret place in the forest to pray for the souls of the animals they would kill and to be blessed by a greater sorcerer, who would then give them the strength and luck on their hunt. They did this each time they were preparing for a hunting trip. But on this particular outing, there was a problem with one of the braves who was attending. His wife was very curious about wanting to know why he had to attend a secret meeting before he went hunting. She asked him many times to explain the ritual to her, but he wouldn't tell her, so she decided to find out on her own. On the night her husband went to the secret meeting, this woman devised a plan to spy on him. She dressed herself as a mountain lion by wrapping a preserved pelt around her body. Then she crawled into the forest and hid behind some rocks and bushes. She could see the men in a circle chanting and asking for luck on the hunt. In the center of the circle stood a great and powerful sorcerer. Desperate to find out the mysteries of the menfolk, she moved closer to the circle. Even from this distance, she could not hear what they were saying. She knew she would have to creep much closer if she hoped to discover their secrets. She crawled closer to the men. She was determined to hear the sorcerer's words and learn the magic for herself. She snuck forward until she was right outside the circle. She hid behind a large rock. She didn't think they saw her, but the sorcerer knew she was there. He stopped the magical ritual he was performing and told the men to grab her and bring her to him. The men captured her and placed her in front of the sorcerer. They knew she must be punished for intruding into a men's ritual. With his powerful magic, the sorcerer cast a spell on her. When he said the magic words, the lion pelt she had wrapped around herself fused with her own skin and hair, and she became half woman and half wild cat. She ran off into the woods and disappeared, but people claim to still see and hear her when she comes out to hunt for food. This is the creature the people of North Carolina thought was killing their livestock. The second story says the Wampus Cat is really the spirit of an old witch who lived way back in the woods on the mountain. People said she was so powerful that she could hypnotize people and control their minds with just a look from her glowing yellow eyes. According to the legend, she would stay in the woods until she got hungry. Then she would come out looking for food. Not only was the old witch able to control people's minds, but she was a shapeshifter and can turn herself into a cat. This is how she attacked her unsuspecting victims. She would change forms and then sneak up to people's houses. There, she would wait until somebody opened a door. Then, as a cat, she would race into the house and hide until dark. During the night, she would use mind control on the people who lived in the house, making sure they didn't wake up no matter what was going on. Once everybody in the house was enchanted, she would steal a child to feed herself. If there was no children, she would steal an animal from the barn. The people of the area were angry and tired of their children and animals disappearing and dying, so they set up a trap for the old woman. Some of the men hid in the barn while the witch cat entered the house. They waited while the witch cast her spell and put the man and woman who lived in the house to sleep. Then the cat snuck back out and went to the barn to turn into a woman and find something to eat. The men who were hiding in the barn stayed very quiet and watched her. The cat squalled a few times and stretched out. Human legs appeared and her face began to change. Once the transformation had started, the men all ran out and surrounded her so they could capture her. Surprised by the sudden appearance of the men, the old witch never finished reciting the magic words, and she got trapped as a half woman, half cat. Once the spell was interrupted, there was no way to reverse it, so she became an evil demon. So did those children hear a Wampus cat screaming in the woods that night? Probably not. It was most likely a bobcat or maybe a cougar or even a panther. Surely it wasn't a real strange half-human cat creature.